Welcome to the Moment of Suspension podcast. I'm Dr. Bek, your host. I wanted to create a space or container that I could tell my stories, not only from my life, but specifically horses, business, and faith, and kind of get out of the dirt, so to speak, and rework a little bit of maybe what people think of me or the things that they've never heard me talk about. I think my life and identity the past 10, 15 years has been focused on my career and chiropractic and Dr. Bek. And this definitely is part of the Dr. Bek brand. I would say it's the beginning of that, for me to have a place to inspire people where I can tell my stories and others can hopefully have a place to tell their stories as well. Moment of suspension is a phrase that it was inspired, I would say, in 2019 from my experiences of show jumping horses, particularly my horse Gigolo that I bought in 2019. He is the most expensive show jumper I've ever bought myself. I didn't come from money, and to ride horses, especially in this day and age, to ride nice horses, you need money. So I would say that the beginning of this podcast starts there. Back in 2019, I had graduated from chiropractic school. I already had been through a lot of things in life, certain versions of grinding to get to where I want to go. And then I got to this place of, I had gotten out of chiropractic school. I had started my business, Giddy Up Chiropractic, and it was growing fast. And I had enough money at the time to start riding horses. And that has always been a thread throughout my entire life. So I finally had enough money. I started riding, and I get this horse named Gigolo. And I would say, I guess that's where the story begins. And through this podcast, I'm going to weave horses, business, and my faith in God into all of these inspiring stories that really involve. So I'll go into what moment of suspension means in a second, but the theme here are things that can be applicable to anybody's life, short moments or longer seasons that we all go through. And the theme that I've recognized that was inspired through jumping a horse is that progress involves movement forward. And then when you start to really tap into that, you realize these patterns in your life of like aha moments, I call them God moments, and things that require divine timing and alignment to happen. Like there's something you can't manufacture. And I think when you become attuned to that, you realize the bigness and goodness of life and God, and it strengthens your faith and confidence. So, but that doesn't mean that everything is good. I want to talk about the good, bad, and the ugly. And it was inspired from what I call a moment of suspension that feels so light and good, peaceful and ease. But there's also these moments that they're defining moments of when you feel like you're punched in the face and you've got to level up and rise up and to be able to get to the next level in whatever you're doing. So I want to encompass all of that to have a safe place to talk about those things, and then also hopefully be able to interview others in the horse and equestrian industry, business, particularly chiropractic is one of my wheelhouses, but also business consulting. I'm very passionate about teaching other animal chiropractors how to have successful businesses, and then faith woven into all of that, which is one of my defining principles of being successful. Moment of suspension comes from this term when we're riding a horse, and my experience is in particular of jumping a horse on course. And so there are certain things that are required to power up a horse in order to jump. And the more you go up in height jumping, the more power suspension you've got to create. And so in 2019, this is where I first felt that feeling. And then over the years, it's become something that I articulate. And literally, we all have these moments in life. So the phrase comes from show jumping horses, but can be applied to anything. And so with that, it's when when you're riding a horse, we'll use that, but it's a metaphor for anything. That when you create suspension, you've got the right amount of leg to hand contact to bottle up the horse's power underneath of you. And when you've hit that sweet spot, it's undeniably one of the best feelings you could ever have. It's like hitting a home run. It's smashing the golf ball and it feels like butter. There's no hook, there's no slice. It's perfect. It's perfection. But the part that has really like sunk in over the years is that, yeah, it feels like perfection, but you didn't execute perfection to get there. And so that's one of the things too, where God and faith comes in, where those moments that feel light and at ease and you're in flow. And when you're riding a horse and you like have those moments, yeah, everything came into alignment. And there's usually a lot of things that were required for you to hit that or execute it. But when you're striving and overperforming, which are things I want to get into too, and I've had those experiences with horses, you end up not finding the right distance to jump the jump. You're over trying, and it's a place that becomes full of fear, control, and exhaustion. In 2019, that's where Moment of Suspension was inspired. And then I've had a lot of ups and downs in life starting from then on, particularly with my own horse. The first year or so went well jumping, and then all of a sudden he started stopping at jumps, which started to create a lot of fear around that for not only me, but him. I felt that in the physical, but it's also something in your life and spiritually. And then when you kind of get into this rut of things going poor, and getting in your head and not getting grounded on how to recover from that or learning from those experiences. So at the time I was so angry because I didn't have the money to buy another horse. I had bought this horse. He was the most expensive thing. And fast forward, he's become one of the biggest blessings in my life and learning experiences, which you also could call a moment of suspension. So it started there in 2019 with horses, and then it has evolved over time. I've kept going back to that phrase where my business was climaxing in 2020, 2021, even through the pandemic. And I realized I was just on this train of whatever I thought was success, which was building stability in my life, making money. But I didn't have all of the tools to know exactly where to go after that. And so my business journey, I would say, took hold a lot after 2019. And I've been successful in my chiropractic practice, but I peaked in 2021 and I didn't know where to go from there. And I got to a place of extreme burnout. And there were a couple factors related to that, that I think a lot of us can relate to. Some of it was just not having I didn't have the knowledge to know, like, okay, well, I've completely maxed myself out physically with this job. How do I go bigger, or where do I want to go with this? And so there was just that factor of not having enough knowledge in business, of knowing where to take the practice from there, but also a little bit of identity or resistance in like, is this really what I want to do? Because the regulatory laws for what I wanted to do, or we also, as a side story, have been trying to improve the laws for animal chiropractic. And so I felt like that was red tape. And so there was that. And then things hadn't gone well with my horse. I had exited competing. And I don't want to say things didn't ever go well. It's just that, again, I kind of hit this climax. So there was like multiple factors where I wasn't where I wanted to be with show jumping. I had kind of gotten to where I wanted to be in business, and now I was plateauing. And so, but through this, the theme that has never failed is the bigness and goodness of God, and these moments in life of when you meet certain people, or when certain things happen that you can't, maybe don't even like consciously know why or how, but they just happen and end up directing you into, the direction that you should go. So with my practice plateauing, I was in a not so great place. I don't even know why it's like making me want to cry. But there comes like a point where you can only try so hard, and you have to learn how to like surrender to what you are and what you are not, and also the purpose that God has for your life. So it's not an accident when things happen that you think shouldn't have happened, but they did. And so that season of my life, I thought I already had like grit and a bulletproof vest on, but that has completely started to define who I am. And I'm also still rewriting that story. And that's why I want to do this podcast, is to show the other sides of Dr. Bek that people have not necessarily been able to see through patient care. And I don't just want to be known as Dr. Bek and horses, even though a lot of who I am is inspired from that. So, but through that, I had plateaued, I would say 2023, 2024, I did not want to do chiropractic anymore. And I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I couldn't fully exit, but I just kept like riding my horse and praying and trying to figure out what to do next. And so in 2025, this year, I finally was able to get out of my mental rut and become re-inspired in the direction that I want to go. And so just going back to the moment of suspension, where you think about small moments in your life, but also seasons that were not an accident, and they become the setback is the setup for what is next. 2025, the first quarter of the year, I literally was prepping to exit my business, and there was just something keeping me in there. I was still taking care of clients, but I was not necessarily adding new clients or growing. And I had started to apply to jobs. Like, I wanted to apply for various business opportunities and take a break from chiropractic. And some of my chiropractic girlfriends had taken me to a business event. And for whatever reason, that particular weekend, I got unlocked. And so that is a moment of suspension where divine timing and alignment is unexplainable, and you're like, this, I couldn't have manufactured this if I try. So I kid you not, the week before or so of going to this event, it was in Nashville, with some of my girlfriends, I had started to apply for jobs, and I was like, okay, I'll go to this like chiropractic business event, and then when I come home, I'll figure out what I'm gonna do. And I go to this event, and it's all about identity and shifting your mindset, which I'm like, you're preaching to the choir, like I've done the work. I wouldn't have had the success that I had if I hadn't have done some of that work. But there was just another layer that had taken hold of me during a lot of these disappointments that I would call in horses and practice. And it was just that perfect storm that was going to take me out. And if I didn't have a new moment of suspension. So at this event, I came to the realization that one of the major roadblocks for my business moving forward was the regulatory tape, which is the side story. And I think why I had also become just so emotionally discouraged and burned out was trying to get the law changed in California for 7 or 8 years. And we actually will have a piece of legislation that goes into voting in January. So all of this has run parallel with this story. And I felt like until that law changed, I couldn't move forward. I couldn't add another doctor. I'd already tried to scale once in 2023, and that doctor wasn't the right fit. And so I guess I had made it an excuse, and I didn't realize that it had taken that much of a stronghold on my identity and my career. So I walked away from that event in May that I was like, okay, well, if I can't get the law changed, then I'll just hire what I thought was my biggest roadblock, which is to have a veterinarian part of my team. And I don't know why that never seemed like an option, because I have amazing relationships with lots of veterinarians in Southern California. That's how I had grown my, business and operated the last almost 10 years. But isn't it amazing when something that you see as a roadblock could end up becoming one of your biggest assets? And so I walked away from that event where I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to close my practice. I'm going to go home and figure it out. But then I remember, and this is one of those moments of suspension with God, where I was going back to the airport and I was like, okay, God, if you've given me the signs that I'm not supposed to exit this practice or this business, but I don't want to do this alone, because that was also another one of my places of burnout was the physical job of adjusting horses. And so I get to the airport and I get a text from this doctor who I've known for 5 years. I had thought he moved away, and I guess he's moved back to San Diego. And lo and behold, I literally had just prayed like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I need a second chiropractor, and then I'll figure out the regulatory stuff. So he literally, from this event, not even 24 hours, I get a text from this doctor, and he is asking me about my horse practice, because he's moved back to San Diego and he wants to, start to work on horses again. And so my ears perked up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like this. So that was in May, and now fast forward to, we're at the end, almost the end of 2025. And we started to work together. The practice has continued to grow since then. We're on this amazing new trajectory. And then from that, there are so many more stories of moment of suspensions that are woven into the beginning of, I would say, is a new chapter. So, from going to disappointments, setbacks, to comebacks, to victories, I hope that these series of stories that are going to be themes of horses, business, and faith will be inspiring to others. And again, a place that they can hopefully come share their stories with me as well. And I had resistance of talking and speaking, but I realized that my voice is something that I want to share with everyone. And I think a lot of times in life we feel like, oh, somebody's already doing that, or I won't be good enough, or nobody wants to hear that. And so creating this podcast is, I would say, my diary of information that I want to be able to go back and look on, and I don't really give a damn if anybody cares about it, even though I don't think that will be the case. So anyways, so I hope that moment of suspension becomes inspiring for those around me, and then those that I don't know. And, people find their people. And so this is a new chapter for me to move into a different space of not just the Dr. Bek that adjusts horses, but the Dr. Bek that is faith-driven, has experiences to share, has authority, and has life experiences that I know everybody else has had as well. And some are willing to share it, and some aren't. And so I hope that this uncovers some of those gems that are out there too, that want to share their stories, that have been maybe overlooked, or they felt like they're the underdog, and that there's power in being real and authentic, and that you are worth it.